The night everything changed began with a simple photograph lying on a polished conference table. Its edges worn, its colors faded, yet heavy enough to stop a powerful man's breath. Jonathan Mercer, a billionaire CEO known across the United States for his ruthless efficiency and impossible standards, stared at the image longer than he ever stared at profit charts or hostile takeovers. In the picture was a man with tired eyes and a faint smile, standing beside a woman whose hand rested gently on his arm. Something about that man's face unsettled Jonathan deeply, stirring a memory he had buried for years. A memory of who he used to be before ambition hardened him. That single moment marked the beginning of a transformation he never expected. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to change even the hardest hearts, take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Jonathan Mercer had built his empire from nothing in Chicago, rising from a modest upbringing to become the youngest CEO in his industry. He believed struggle forged greatness and that mercy weakened discipline. His employees respected him, but few felt warmth toward him. Long hours, relentless pressure, and an unspoken rule of emotional distance defined life inside Mercer Holdings. Jonathan told himself that feelings were distractions and that success required sacrifice. He rarely thought about the man he was before the suits, the luxury penthouse, and the constant security detail. That version of him felt like someone else's life. The photograph had been brought to him during a routine review of a company-funded community housing project scheduled for demolition. The land was valuable, and Jonathan saw only numbers and expansion. Yet the file included profiles of families who lived there, and among them was the widow from the photo, a woman named Ruth Caldwell. She had written a handwritten appeal, explaining why she could not relocate easily, citing her husband's death and her fragile health. Jonathan skimmed it at first, until one line slowed him down. She had written that her husband looked exactly the same before he died as he did in that photo, exhausted but smiling, because dignity mattered more to him than comfort. That sentence clung to Jonathan's thoughts for days. It followed him into boardrooms and sleepless nights. It reminded him of his own father, a factory worker named Samuel Mercer who came home every evening, worn down by life yet never bitter. Jonathan remembered how his father used to smile despite failing health, how he never complained, how he passed away quietly after years of pushing his body beyond its limits. Jonathan had been young then, too young to understand gratitude, too focused on escaping poverty to appreciate the love he already had. Against his own instincts, Jonathan decided to visit the housing complex personally. He told himself it was for optics, but deep down he needed to see the woman behind the words. The complex stood in a quiet Ohio town, weathered but clean, held together by residents who treated it as more than a place to sleep. When Jonathan arrived, there were no cameras or executives, just a man in a tailored coat standing out among modest brick buildings. Ruth Caldwell lived in a small unit near the end of the block. She moved slowly, her posture slightly bent, yet her eyes were alert and steady. The walls of her home were lined with old photographs and simple furniture that showed years of careful care rather than neglect. Jonathan noticed the same photograph from the file sitting on a shelf, its frame cracked at the corner. Her husband, Thomas Caldwell, had been a construction worker who died after ignoring his illness so he could keep providing. Ruth spoke calmly about her life, about the joy of small routines, about faith that carried her through grief. She never asked Jonathan for pity, only understanding. What struck Jonathan most was not her loss, but her peace. She carried sorrow without resentment, hardship without anger. She explained that her husband believed work was a form of love, that showing up every day mattered, even when it hurt. She said he refused to be remembered as weak, and that his smile in that photo was how he wanted the world to see him. Jonathan realized then that success was not always loud or celebrated, and that some victories were invisible to balance sheets. After leaving Ruth's home, Jonathan sat in his car for a long time. He felt something unfamiliar tightening his chest, not fear or stress, but regret. He thought about the employees he had dismissed without hearing their stories, the communities he had disrupted in the name of progress, and the part of himself he had silenced long ago. He had promised his dying father that he would build a better life, yet somewhere along the way, he forgot why that promise mattered. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan did something no one expected. He halted the demolition project indefinitely and ordered a full review of the company's community impact initiatives. He began walking through his offices instead of isolating himself at the top floor, noticing faces instead of spreadsheets. He listened more, spoke less, and slowly reshaped the culture he once ruled with cold precision. People noticed the change, unsure at first if it was real. Jonathan personally ensured that Ruth Caldwell and others like her were supported, not as charity cases, but as valued members of the community. He funded healthcare access, job training, and housing renovations without branding or publicity. When questioned by shareholders, he spoke about legacy, about responsibility, and about the cost of forgetting humanity. Some investors left, but many stayed, inspired by a vision that balanced profit with purpose. Late one evening, Jonathan returned to his penthouse and took out an old box he had not opened in years. Inside was a photograph of his father, worn and fading, showing the same tired eyes and gentle smile as Thomas Caldwell. For the first time since his father's death, Jonathan allowed himself to cry, not from weakness, but from release. He understood now that strength did not come from dominance, but from compassion, and that true leadership meant remembering the faces behind every decision. As this story draws closer to its end, if it has touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps spread messages of hope, empathy, and transformation. Just before the ending, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and share what kindness or second chance changed your life, because your story might inspire someone else who feels lost today. Jonathan Mercer never became a softer man in the way the world expected. He remained driven, focused, and ambitious, but his ambition found a new direction. He learned that the measure of a life was not found in what it accumulated, but in what it uplifted. All because of a widow's quiet strength and a single sentence that reminded him who he was meant to be. And long after profits rose and fell, that lesson stayed with him, shaping every choice, every legacy, and every future he helped rebuild.